Hello again, Mary here. Today we're going to do lesson number 3 in our Eat More Plants program. So just to review, eating plants creates fewer greenhouse gases because growing, distributing, storing, selling plants, all of that creates less greenhouse gases. And as we know from our previous lessons, greenhouse gases trap heat and cause climate change. Now, in future lessons, we're going to get more in depth into the science of growing foods and energy transfer, but not today. Today, what we're going to think about and explore is the question of what's the rush? Why do we need to think about what we're eating today? Why do we need to think about what we're eating for our next meal? Why is it so important right now? And the answer to that is something called, in great part, something called the albedo effect. And you've probably learned about this in science, but I'm going to do a quick overview for you. The albedo effect is the reflection of solar radiation. So let's look at a little sketch I did, some sketches I did to help me get my head around it. So what we have here on my handy dandy dry erase board is some sketches. So, albedo effect, reflection of solar radiation or heat. So dark surfaces like the ocean or a black asphalt road have low reflection and high absorption. So when you're on a gray sidewalk with bare feet, have you ever stepped off the sidewalk onto the black asphalt and it's hotter? That's because dark surfaces, that black surface absorbs more heat. It doesn't reflect the heat, bounce off. It absorbs it. So low reflection, high absorption is low albedo. What we want is high albedo. And the albedo effect is that lighter surfaces like snow on the top of these mountains or ice, this is my iceberg, light and heat, solar radiation hits that surface, the light colored surface, and bounces off and goes back into the atmosphere. So high reflection equals high albedo. And that's what we would like to have. But here's what's happening right now, today, a feedback loop. So what happens is we have climate change and global warming. So our oceans are getting warmer and our climate is getting warmer. Therefore, our polar ice caps and snow is melting. So what we have is global warming melts the ice, and in turn that exposes more dark ocean, dark surfaces, which in turn absorbs the heat, solar radiation, and causes more ice to melt. And when more ice melts, that exposes more dark ocean, which in turn absorbs more heat, which in turn causes more ice to melt. And on and on and on and on and on. And that is not good. This is not what we want. And that's happening right now, today. So that's why we need to really think about soon, now, what we're eating and what the effect is on our climate. Okay, so that's an overview of the albedo effect. Whoops. I'm gonna have my little friend say hello. Oh, this is Norbert. He's sitting next to me. You can't see him, but he's helping me today. Okay, you can sit back down, Norbert. All right, so that gets us. You notice when I explained this, the science of this, I used an illustration because it's kind of complicated and it's much easier to understand when you see it. So that inspired this lesson. Today we're going to do we're going to make albedo effect postcards. And this is what the final product is going to look like. So before we get into the lesson, let's review what you're going to need. You're going to need a piece of cardstock, which is like thicker paper, and it's 5.5 inches long and 3.25 inches wide. So if you don't already have a cut a piece. And then you're going to use either markers or colored Sharpies, or if you want, so here's your markers, And it doesn't have to be colored Sharpies. It could be your own just regular markers. Or you can use colored pencils. That works too. I use Sharpies because they're brighter. And you also need a thin, if you're going to use mark Sharpies, you need a thin, like flare black felt tip pen. But if you're going to use marker, if you're going to use colored pencils, make sure you have at least one black colored pencil. But to start with, we're going to use pencil. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is, you've got this, let's get my other dry erase board here. And you see we have our blank postcard. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go about a 1/2 inch down and draw a line. And then a 1/2 inch down from the bottom. And we're going to about a 1/2 inch up from the 1/2 inch down from the top, and then 1/2 inch up from the bottom. And we're going to draw another line. And this is, you can see where we're going to put our title, Albedo effect, degree of light reflection. And then we're going to put low albedo, medium albedo, and a high albedo. So this is where we're going to do our labeling. Then you're going to split your postcard into 3 panels, because you're going to have 3 different drawings, because we're showing 3 different levels of albedo effect. All right, so I've got my 3 panels, so you should be doing this along with me right now. So the next thing you're going to do is, we're going to use a technique called perspective. And what perspective is when you're drawing, making things that are in the distance, making things look like some part of the drawing is in the distance and some part is in the foreground coming at you. And a way to do that is to use a vanishing point. And a vanishing point is the place where the background disappears. So I want you to put a dot in the middle of each panel with your pencil. Okay? Now, in the first 2 panels, you're going to very lightly with your pencil draw a triangle down from your vanishing point to the edges of that panel. So I'm going to do this now. Now in this 3rd panel, my vanishing point's here, but it's not going to the edges of the panel. It's going to be a river. So I am going to, and I'm not going to make it straight lines all the way. I'm going to kind of curve it around, because it is going to be a river that's small and gets larger. And rivers, as you know, don't have straight edges. All right, so I've got my vanishing point, and this is going to be a road that comes closer as it gets larger at the bottom. This is going to be farm fields that are looking closer, and it's getting larger in the bottom, and this is going to be a river. So you've done that. Now you're going to draw a horizon line for each panel. The first one, I'm going to go about halfway and draw the line. And the second one, and I'm going to draw a straight line because this is a city. And then you can go ahead on this one and erase the top part of your triangle. And in this one, this is farmland, so I'm going to make it just kind of a smooth hill. And I'm going to erase the top of my triangle. And this is going to be mountains and hills. So I'm going to make my horizon line a little lower here, and it's going to be a little bumpy. It's going to be kind of a hill, and it's going to be bumpy, to represent, more accurately represent a true landscape horizon. All right. And the next thing we're going to do is put a sun in the corner of each panel, so we can show solar radiation. Now you can just have a sun like that. You can have each one be the same, or you can have each one have different kinds of rays. I'm going to have large, small, large, small, large, small on that one. No rays on this one, and then this one I'm just going to do little rays like that. Okay, so I've got 3 different types of sun. So you're all set with your suns. Now, in the first landscape, this is a city, and this is going to be my road. Again, you're still using pencil. And so, to make this look more like a road, I'm going to have a straight line, dashed line, going down the center, as roads do. Okay? And then I'm going to have a city. So I have lots of ideas down here for your city. You definitely want to have some buildings or a house or something along those lines. You definitely want to have a road. You can add cars on the road. You could add cars up here. You could have bikes. You could have people. You could have houses instead of buildings if you want. It's totally up to you. I went simple and I just did some rectangle buildings on my example. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to do some just rectangles, overlapping, some tall, some small. So there's my city, and I made very simple ones. Yours can be more elaborate. And you could have a car, like I said, a bike, you could have people. So there's your cityscape to start with. Next, and as we know, black asphalt, dark surface, low albedo, low reflection, because dark surfaces, it reflects less and it absorbs more. All right, next is going to be our farmland. And the first thing you want to have there is a barn. So you kind of, barns are very easily give people the idea of a farm. So I'm going to do a barn, which is pretty straightforward. You just do a rectangle and another rectangle. And I've got my roof, and it goes back like that. So there's my barn. Now one way that lets people know it's a barn also is that big X on the doors. So I'm going to put a big X there. And that kind of makes it look a little more like a barn. And I'm going to put some trees. And I'm going to do trees like we learned from our last lesson. Just odd shaped trees, triangle trees. And I'm going to do a big circle tree. And I'm going to put some designs inside the trees. Okay, so I've got some trees. Now, you want to continue using the idea of perspective. So pretend you have this vanishing, well, you still have it there. And pretend your fields are going, rather than to the edge, maybe mark off 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. And you're going to not actually draw it, but pretend you are, and have your lines go from your vanishing point down to create your fields. And there I have some fields. Now I'm going to break those fields up to create visual interest. You don't have to, but I thought that would look cooler and more interesting. Now you can, I have a list of things here. You can add, I put trees, you could put a rabbit up there, you could put a horse up there, you could add a silo in back of the barn if you wanted. To give it some interesting things happening there on the horizon line. But I would like for you to take some time. You're not going to do it yet. You're going to do it once we fill in with color. But you're going to fill patterns, two color patterns into each section of the farmland to create visual interest and fun, bright patterns to look at. Now here's some examples of patterns. You can do stripes, X's, dots, squares, diamonds, squiggly lines, hearts, and so on. And I will review that again when we get to the color section. So there I've got my basic outline of my farmland. All right, so next I'm going to do my mountains. And what I want to do for that is simply do some triangles. And make sure those triangles have a little bit, you show some snow, because that is a light colored surface, therefore it has high reflection, therefore it has a high albedo. And then you could do some little trees too if you wanted. A little bit closer, they get bigger as you get closer to the bottom of the page. And then I have some other ideas for here too. You could have trees, I said tents, deers, flowers. As you get down here, you could have some flowers. It's totally up to you. All right, So now we have 3 panels with 3 different landscapes that have 3 different types of surfaces. So the last thing we want to do is do our solar radiation lines, right? So we know on asphalt, which is a dark surface in a city, the albedo effect is low because the solar radiation is going straight into that dark surface. So we have our lines going in. And I'm going to make these a little bit thicker so I can fill them in with yellow. Then this is medium albedo, so medium light reflection. So what you want to show here is one of your solar radiation lines going in and absorbing, and the other reflecting and bouncing off. And you can see right there in that middle panel how I have one going into my patterned fields of food and the other bouncing off. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to have this one go in to my field, and this one bounce off. All right, and then last you have high albedo because it's a light surface. It's not ice in this point, in this picture illustration, it's snow, but still that's a light color and you have high albedo. So you get all that solar radiation bouncing off of your white surface. Again, I'm going to make them a little bit thicker so I can go back and put yellow in there. All right, so I've got my sketches, each panel. Then at this point you want to go back over with your black flare marker or your black color pencil over all the things that you've done in pencil. The reason we start out on pencil is because as you go on, if you're not liking it, you can erase it really easily and tweak it. So now you should take your black pencil or your black flare marker and overwrite. Go over everything you've done in pencil that you like. Last but not least, funnest part is adding the color. Now I want everything to have color except for white on your mountaintops, and I want to leave the title area white, and I want to leave the title area down here white. All right, so now you're going to use your markers or your colored pencils like I said, and you're going to fill everything in. And I mean, look, every sky is filled in. This sky is turquoise, this one's purple, and then I have a gray sky, and of course I filled that road in all with black. Set that down. And I did my buildings all different colors. I didn't do every single sun in yellow. I did this one orange. You could do orange or red. Just make sure your sun is a warm color. And then I left my solar radiation for yellow. And I, of course, put a yellow line down the center of my road, and I made my road black. Then here in the middle are my fun farm fields, and you can see each field is 2 colors, and I did dots and zigzags and triangles, and a couple of the farm fields I left solid color, but I used lots of color. And then over here I have my river in blue, my hills in yellow, and all my mountains in greens, but you can choose the colors that you want. All right, last but not least, you're going to fill in your titles. So what you want to have here at the top of your postcard is albedo effect, and I would capitalize it, A-L-B-E-D-O effect. And then you want to put what that is, and that is, albedo effect is, what did we say? It is the reflection of solar radiation. So I didn't do a good job of balancing out the space between here and reflection of solar radiation. So I'm gonna have to write that kind of small. Reflection of solar radiation. And that's R-A-D-I-A-T-I-O-N. So down here, you want to title each of your panels as low albedo, medium, albedo, and high. Now I did these all in capital letters, but if you draw neater in lowercase, you can write the titles in lowercase letters, as long as you're neat. So do it as neatly as you possibly can. And your finished product, as you have seen, looks like, my dry erase board, dry erase marker away, looks like this. And that is a very informative postcard. And guess what? You can, what you might need to do, mine, you can see, I can see marker on the back side, it bled through. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to get some glue and glue a back and then create it like a postcard. So what you would do is you would put a line down the center, like a postcard, and then maybe some lines. So now what I have is a postcard. So you leave one half empty, so you could do some writing on that. This is where the stamp goes, and this is where the address of who you're sending it to goes. So if you have a grandmother or an aunt or a cousin that you think might find information about the albedo effect interesting, you could write them a postcard and pop it in the mail and explain what albedo is and the feedback loop that's happening right now, so why it's important to be thinking about this now. All right, that's our albedo effect postcard. I look forward to seeing them, and I hope some of you actually pop them in the mail to somebody else. But if you really love it, you might not want to send it away because it looks so fabulous. You might want to keep it and put it on your wall. Okay,